listening to The Stephen Tauriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Tauriello Show. And you never know where Stephen may go. And now, here's Stephen.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. So, have you guys ever heard that phrase, happier than a clam? I actually heard this the other day, and I'm like, I've heard that before. Where does it come from? Well, a long time ago, the phrase actually used to be happier than a clam during high tide. And the reason is because in order to catch a clam, it has to be low tide. And so clams actually liked the high tide because they knew the fishermen couldn't get to them. And so that's where the phrase comes, happier than a clam. It actually got shortened down. It was happier than a clam in high tide, and then it just got shrank down over the years to just happier than a clam. So I thought that would be kind of cool. I am always looking these things up. I'm always looking for knowledge. I love it. I like learning, and most of all, I love wisdom. I'm one of those wisdom collectors, man. I will sit and listen to my elderly. I'll listen to any wisdom that anybody wants to give, and I soak it up, man. I love it, and I think wisdom is way more important than intelligence. And we're going to learn something here every day, folks, every day. But we have a whole lot to get to, and somebody that's probably not happier than a clam is the establishment corporate media. Because you're never going to believe how many people viewed Tucker's first video he released on Twitter last night. It's actually quite amazing. This certainly sends a strong message to the corporate legacy media that they are dead as dinosaurs, man. They are going to go extinct. What this shows is that more people are getting their news from independent media like this, and like all the hundreds of other podcasts out there and radio shows and YouTube channels and Rumble videos. And that is great. However, the corporate media swamp establishment, the uniparty machine, is not happy about this. And they're not going to let go of it easily, folks. They're not going to want to let go of it easily. And I have another article. So we're going to be talking about how the government is using artificial intelligence to target podcasts. Yes, so they actually realize how effective podcasts are. Again, shows like mine, Bongino's, Steven Crowder, Mark Levin, Dennis Prager, Tim Pool, all these shows are extremely effective. I know I used to listen to these shows all the time. I still try and catch a podcast here and there. It's kind of hard when you're making your own show to listen to other people's show because, listen, folks, this show takes almost 100% of my spare time. So the only spare time I have is, well, I don't have any, because if I'm not doing the show, I'm actually working my own job, because I work just like you folks. I'm a middle-class working American just like you. So the establishment swamp temple realizes how effective podcasts are and how effective independent media is. And so I knew it was just going to be a matter of time before they came after it. And I got an article here from Brownstone Institute that discusses just that. So we're going to go through why they're doing this. We're going to go through how they're going to do it and what this means for the future. However, I want to back up. So I want to go back up to this article that I got about Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson is back, ladies and gentlemen. He launched a video last night, and this is something else that's pretty interesting. Twitter is launching a YouTube competitor, and Tucker's going to test drive it. So Tucker Carlson's biographer, Chadwick Moore, has become something of a spokesperson for Tucker. And according to Chadwick, Twitter is gearing up to release its own version of YouTube, and Tucker will be the one taking it for a spin as the test driver of this new platform. So I got Chadwick right here, which is technically Tucker Carlson's like spokesperson. He's been kind of giving us all the behind the scenes stuff. So I want you guys to we're going to go ahead and listen to this guy, see what he's got to say.
And is it Fox News didn't have the foresight to include Twitter in their non-compete in Tucker's contract. So Tucker is still under contract with Fox. He's still an employee of Fox News. In fact, the last time I spoke to him, which was about a week ago, he got his paycheck that morning from Fox. So Fox is paying him to not have a show, and a lot of money, as you can imagine. But from what I understand is they failed to think that Twitter would ever be a competitor.
That is great.
And so that's convenience for him to have a show. Now, what his team has told me about that is that they're going to test out the product. Twitter is launching a new service. I believe it's called X Video. It's meant to compete with YouTube. And they're going to test it out. If the product works well and if they enjoy it, then they'll stay there. But they don't really feel committed to stay there. He's not an employee of Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not paying him any money. They're simply going to try it out on Twitter and then maybe move somewhere else or maybe stay there.
Tucker is back, ladies and gentlemen. It is official. Tucker's going to be coming back, and I'm going to go ahead and play you the show he did last night because everybody's talking about it today. The corporate media is losing their freaking minds, man, with Tucker Carlson releasing this video. It is great. You can see the fear. You could smell the fear in the corporate media's eyes, man. You can just see it. They are crapping their pants right now, and I love it. And so I'm going to go ahead and play you Tucker's first Twitter video that he posted last night. And you guys ready for this? I hope you're sitting down. You ready? So Tucker's first Twitter video posted last night went mega viral and is up to 72.1 million views as of right now as I'm recording this. So it's probably going to go up. 72 million views, folks. That is crazy.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. This morning, it looks like somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight, puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down. So, if this was intentional, it was not a military tactic, it was an act of terrorism. The question is, who did it? Well, let's see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by the Russian government. It currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. The dam's reservoir supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it. In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian natural gas pipeline, last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media, which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure. Bill Kristol, the man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal and even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump. The rest of the pundit class made similar, clearly coordinated noises. Putin did it! Putin did it! And their reasoning was simple. Putin is evil, and evil people do evil things purely for the dark joy of being evil. In this specific case, Putin attacked himself, which is the most evil thing you can do, and therefore perfectly in character for a man that evil. That was their explanation. No one who's paid to cover these things seemed to entertain even the possibility it could have been the Ukrainians who did it. No chance of that. Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky. And we can say for a dead certain fact that he was not involved. He couldn't have been. Zelensky is too decent for terrorism. Now, you see him on television, and it's true you might form a different impression. Sweaty and rat-like, a comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians, a friend of BlackRock. But don't believe your own eyes. Actually, Mr. Zelensky is a very good man. The best, really. As George W. Bush once noted, he is our generation's Winston Churchill. Of all the people in the world, our shifty, dead-eyed Ukrainian friend in the tracksuit is uniquely incapable of blowing up a dam. He's literally a living saint, a man in whom there is no sin. That's why Lindsey Graham is so attracted to him. They're just two good people, hanging out together and being good. And like all good people, when they meet in person, they spend a lot of time talking about killing people and laughing like friends do. Here's the pair last week.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
The Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says. A smile spreads across his thin, quivering lips as he forms the words. He looks like a starving man contemplating a breakfast buffet. The aroma of death has aroused Lindsey Graham. Thanks so much, replies Zelensky. He feels the same way. See, there's nothing dark here. Just two middle-aged guys celebrating the killing of a population. They don't seem like the kind of people who'd enjoy flooding villages or starting a famine. And in any case, who cares if they are? It's really not your business. Your job is to support Ukraine. Watch Nikki Haley, a Republican candidate for president, explain this principle on CNN.
A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us. And for them to sit there and say that this is a territorial dispute, that's just not the case. To say that we should stay neutral, it is in the best interest of America. It's in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through. We have to finish it.
See? It's very easy to understand. It is vitally important for you to support Ukraine because it's necessary for Ukraine to be supported by you. Your support is mandatory until it's finished, whatever it is, and whatever that means. So shut up and support Ukraine, or else you're in trouble. Back when they still taught logic, statements like this were known as tautologies. Something is true because it is. The more you repeat it, the truer it becomes. It's a self-reinforcing reality. There was a time when tautologies were considered illegitimate arguments, not to mention hilariously stupid. Only dumb people talk like that. Now everybody in power talks like that. Diversity is our strength. Trans women are women. Zelensky is Churchill. It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't need an explanation, and don't ask questions. Sound familiar? Of course it does. That's the pap they're serving us day after day in steaming, lumpy portions. By this point, it's possible that American citizens are the least informed people in the world. Your average yak herder in Tajikistan knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. It's obvious. Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually a girl? Come on. That idea would never occur to him. You've got to be lied to at full volume over a period of years in order to reach conclusions like that. And of course, we have been. The media lie. They do. But mostly they just ignore the stories that matter. What's happened to the hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine? No clue. Who organized those BLM riots 3 years ago? No one's gotten to the bottom of that. What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's still classified. How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money? How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly on. Not only are the media not interested in any of this, they are actively hostile to anybody who is. In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime. Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't. The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened. On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, the usual lineup. There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason. Nobody knows what's happening. A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens. If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Trust us. That's how they maintain control. When Western tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise. The few Russians who understood what was really going on in the rest of the world had learned about it from listening to shortwave radio broadcasts, sometimes under the covers so the neighbors wouldn't hear. 50 years later, it is bewildering to consider the ironies here. We're the ones who live in ignorance now. The U.S. government has managed to classify more than 1 billion so-called public documents. So at this point, we can't possibly know what our leaders are doing. We're not allowed to know. By definition, that is not a democracy. Yet it's fine with the media. Secrecy is a powerful tool of control. Stop asking how we got so rich. Here's another story about racism. Go eat each other. That's the program. That's how most of us now live here in the United States. Manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos. It is unhealthy and it's dehumanizing, and we're tired of it. As of today, we've come to Twitter, which we hope will be the shortwave radio under the blankets. We're told there are no gatekeepers here. If that turns out to be false, we'll leave. But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
So there you go, folks. Tucker is back, already hitting it strong with the Russia-Ukraine war. I love it. We need somebody like Tucker and his team hitting on this Russia-Ukraine conflict, because somebody out there, folks, needs to start digging into this, because this entire thing seems like it's going to be going on for decades. I love how Tucker Carlson's still getting paychecks from Fox News. That's exactly what they deserve. And I can't believe they did not include a digital space or Twitter or something in his contract. That is crazy. Talk about a big screw up there. Somebody over there at Fox is getting fired because he had a contract for $20 million, folks. So not only did he get fired, but Fox News is going to continue to pay him as he's making money from Twitter and these new, and it's crazy, folks, because I'll tell you this. The amount of people Tucker Carlson had on his Twitter video last night is insane. And so I'm going to go ahead and get to the rest of the article here. So this move really isn't a surprise, since Elon has been talking about long-form videos since he first purchased Twitter. This was one of the first things I recommended, folks, when Elon was reaching out and he was asking people what would make Twitter better. I said something, a video platform that don't act like a bunch of commies like YouTube, and just let people release what they want to release within reason. You know what I mean? I mean, free speech is absolute, I believe, in my eyes, but there are certain things, you don't want pornography being released on your social media platform. I don't think the advertisers are going to like that. But I'm saying within reason, folks, like this battle on free speech has to stop, because it's doing nothing but getting worse and worse and worse. And there's no way there should be anybody that is self-declared as the arbiters of truth. No way. That is reaching dangerous levels of chaos right there. So like the YouTube app and native video apps, you can easily watch Twitter videos on your television. This is going to be great. I think this is a great idea. I recommended this to Elon when he was asking these questions on Twitter a long time ago. This is a perfect idea, and this is great. This is great, folks. This is the parallel economy the conservatives and the Republicans needed. This is what we needed. And it's happening, folks. It's happening right before our eyes. We are building a parallel economy and now people don't have to go to Target. Now people don't have to go to Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch. Now people don't have to go to YouTube. Okay, and now it's going to take a while for these platforms like, Xvideo and Rumble to kind of take off. Rumble's already doing great, but they do have, they dished out some serious money for some of their entertainment, like Steven Crowder, Dan Bongino. I think Russell Brand was one of them. So they have been dishing out money for these guys to do live form interviews or live form videos on Rumble. But That's good because it's attracting more people there, and I love to see that. I don't want a platform where it's just Republican conservative-leaning videos. I want a video platform where it's everything. Speech and debate is extremely important, and in times like this, you need more speech, not less, all right? And I think we all know that. However, some people don't like that because it takes away from their control. They lose control when they don't have the control of the information, when they don't own all the information. So Elon is positioning Twitter as a direct rival, not just to YouTube, but also to the mainstream media. Yes. This couldn't have happened at a better time, since YouTube recently took down an interview with Robert Kennedy Jr. in which he made allegations about the CIA being responsible for his father's assassination. This is crazy, folks. I watched this video, and I'm not going to play it because it's pretty long, but you can watch it. It's everywhere. You can watch this. It's just type in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and CIA, so on and so forth. This is crazy because for the longest time, you were called a conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat wearing kook if you said that JFK was assassinated by the CIA. But now, folks, like it is almost starting to become common knowledge. Now, we don't know for sure. There's nothing definitive. All we have essentially is just lots and lots of evidence that point to that direction. But still, it's not right for YouTube to censor this stuff. Let people hear this stuff, man. Let people see this stuff. People are not dumb. It's like, where did this notion come all of a sudden to where somebody needs to control what people see and hear? This is what I don't get. You should want people to see all the information, see all angles of the story, even the stories of people you don't agree with. Because then you can make informed decisions, folks. And people are not dumb, okay? I think they know, that their neighbors aren't aliens. You know what I mean? So it's like, why all of a sudden the sudden urge to censor everything? So if Elon and Tucker can pull off the successful launch of his new platform, it will revolutionize the media landscape in an incredibly positive way and may finally put an end to the regime's propaganda machine. Yes, yes, yes. I could not agree more. This is great. I think this is, like I said, more speech the better. More information we have the better. But folks, I'm just letting you know it's going to get dicey. Okay? It is going to get dicey because the corporate media swamp establishment is not going to like this at all. They see they're losing their grip on power. They see they're losing their grip on information, and they're losing. They're panicking. They're freaking out. And this is like cornering a rabid animal. They are going to lash out. And so that's what leads me to my next story. So more people are turning to independent media outlets to get their news. And the establishment Swamp Temple is trying desperately to keep their stranglehold on their monopoly on information. So I got an article here from Brownstone Institute. This is going to blow your mind. So here's the title. Censors use artificial intelligence to target podcasts. Yep. They're coming for the podcast, folks. So before I get into this article, this hat tip to Brett Swanson. It's dated February 23rd. Before I get into this article, I kind of want to go back and fill you guys into how the podcasting thing works. It's different than YouTube and different from Rumble. This is kind of like a little inside baseball. So with podcasting, it's its own kind of entity. It's not radio. It's not video. It's like something in between. You can have video podcasts or you can have audio podcasts, but it's definitely its own little realm, its own little genre of entertainment here. So podcasters, you have your main podcast platforms. You have like Spotify, you got Apple Podcasts, and everybody has podcast hosts. Mine is called Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout is where all my content goes to Buzzsprout. It's one of the better podcast hosts out there. There's a few of them. There's quite a bit of them. I picked Buzzsprout because I don't have to monetize, which means I don't have to do any kind of advertising. So a lot of podcast hosts will ask that you do some advertising for them. I didn't want that for you guys. And so I'm going to try and steer away from the advertising as much as I can, unless of course it's beneficial to you guys, to my listeners. If it's an awesome product I think is going to be beneficial to you, I'll do it. But as of of right now, no, I'm not. That's not what we're here for. I'm not interested in that. As of right now, that could change. Back to the inside baseball. So Apple Podcasts is like the king of the podcasts. Like if you want to focus on reaching out to anywhere, it's Apple Podcasts. It's the king. It's like the YouTube of podcasting. And so Apple Podcasts is the most popular. It has the biggest algorithm. It has the biggest reach, everything. And so your goal is to get your show on Apple Podcasts. This show is on Apple Podcasts. However, what's great about Apple Podcasts is they don't censor anything, almost nothing. I mean, they censor almost nothing. They just let the podcasters have at it. They let us do our thing, and they stay out of our shows. They don't censor us. They don't ban us. I have never, to this day, had any problems with Apple Podcasts censoring my show, and that is great, folks. However, what I think it is, as far as I understand, there's only like 12 or 13 people that are working in the podcast division over there at Apple. So I don't know if they're not censoring because they don't want to butt in, they don't want to censor people, or is it that they can't because they just don't have the resources? And so that's a little bit of the inside baseball with that. But as of right now, I haven't had no problems with Apple Podcasts whatsoever up until I read this article. So, reams of internal documents known as the Twitter files show that the social media censorship in recent years was far broader and more systemic than even we critics suspected. Worse, the files exposed deep cooperation, even operational integration, among Twitter and dozens of government agencies, including the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, DoD, CIA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, that's CISA, Department of Health and Human Services, CDC, and of course the White House. That's crazy, folks. So we now know, after Matt Taibbi came out with the Twitter files, after Elon purchased Twitter, which is essentially a crime scene when he got it, he released the Twitter files to Matt Taibbi. Matt Taibbi went to town. Thank God for Elon, and thank God for Matt Taibbi that came in and did this. And really, all this is thanks to Elon Musk. We never would have known any of this, folks. And so now we know, it is a fact, a proven fact, that all these government institutions were directly cooperating with Twitter to censor people's speech. With the New York Post story about the Hunter Biden laptop, and then between doctors and scientists that were speaking out against the vaccines. Okay, so we know that. That is common knowledge now. That to me is insane. No accountability for any of it. The government has not been held accountable. The only people holding the government accountable for this is the House Oversight Committee, Jim Jordan's chair over there, with the weaponization of the United States government, the Twitter files. I think that's the committee that they're going through this on. So again, that's common knowledge, and to me, that's insane. This is like the biggest scandal in United States history up until this most recent scandal where Joe Biden was getting bribes for $5 million from a foreign country. That's the next biggest scandal, and we're going to get into that on a later show. This show, I want to focus around the censorship of podcasts and so on and so forth. So government agencies also enlisted a host of academic and nonprofit organizations to do their dirty work. The Global Engagement Center, housed in the State Department, for example, was originally launched to combat international terrorism, but has now been repurposed to target Americans. Yes. So if you listen to my previous show, we talked about this and how they had this pyramid of far-right radicalizations. And in this pyramid, you have 4 stages, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And first stage being the most laxed one. It's in green, and it has outlets like Fox News, the National Rifle Association, the entire Republican Party. Okay, and then stage 2, level 2 of the radicalization pyramid is Make America Great Again, the PragerU, Turning Point, Charlie Kirk over there, Turning Point. So essentially, they're lobbying and lumping everybody in to this pyramid, and at the top of this pyramid is the freaking Nazi Party, folks. So they're essentially lumping us all in to white supremacist, white nationalist, domestic terrorists. This isn't good. And I actually talk about that in my previous show. This is essentially what they're doing. This was paid for by Department of Homeland Security with an $80 million grant. If you're somebody that voted for Donald Trump, your government is using your tax dollars to lump you into a pyramid with the Nazi Party and the white nationalists, the Order, National Action, the Base, National Socialist Legion, and Iron March. Yeah. So these are obviously extreme white nationalist parties or white nationalist groups, and you're in with those. Is that not incredible, folks? So this is what the government's doing. Instead of taking all the tools and weapons we gave them to fight foreign enemies, they're turning it on to the American people. And this is why, folks, it is so important we get to the bottom of this weaponization thing. And we're going to be talking about that in a minute. They are freaking out, folks, because they know it is coming. There's getting ready to be a change of tide here. There's getting ready to be a tide change. All right, so the U.S. State Department also funded a UK outfit called the Global Disinformation Index, which blacklists American individuals and groups and convinces advertisers and potential vendors to avoid them. So Homeland Security created the Election Integrity Partnership, including the Stanford Internet Observatory, the University of Washington Center for Informed Public, and the Atlantic Council's DFR Lab, which flagged for social suppression tens of millions of messages posted by American citizens. So here you are, more government-funded programs that are censoring you and me, and now they're coming after podcasts, which, folks, this is it. You know, if they come after the independent media and they figure out a way to squash this, I don't really know how people are going to get their news other than Twitter. So that is why Elon Musk is a very, very important piece on this board, folks. Very important piece. And so back to the article, even former high government U.S. officials got on the act, appealing directly and successfully to Twitter to ban mischief-making truth tellers. That was when they used those 51 intel agents, used that letter, so on and so forth. And then, you know, that's what they used to get prerequisite to predicate them censoring the New York Post story and so on and so forth. So all they did was the media, the symbiotic relationship the media has with the government, reached out to Twitter and said, hey, be on the lookout for some Russian disinformation. And then as soon as the New York Post story hit, boom, they censored it. Nobody was allowed to send it. No one was allowed to read it. However, it did have like that Streisand effect to where the more they censored it, the more people wanted to see it. And so that was kind of crazy. And they never learned from that lesson either, by the way. They could just keep doing it. So with the total credibility collapse of legacy media over the last 15 years, people around the world turned to social media for news and discussion. When social media then began censoring the most pressing topics such as COVID-19, people increasingly turned to podcasts. Physicians and analysts who had been suppressed on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and who were, of course, nowhere to be found in legacy media, delivered via podcast much of the very best analysis on the broad array of pandemic science and policy. So, which brings us to the new report from Brookings Institute. So, which concludes that one of the most prolific sources of misinformation is now, you guessed it, podcasts. And further, that the underregulation of podcasts is a grave danger. Think about that, folks. They're already starting the narrative that podcasts are the biggest deliverers of misinformation. And to even add to that, because they're underregulated, they are a grave danger. So Valerie Wirtschafter writes an article titled "Audible Reckoning: How Top Political Podcasters Spread Unsubstantiated and False Claims." And so she writes this, quote, due in large part to the say whatever you want perceptions of the medium, podcasting offers a critical avenue through which unsubstantiated and false claims proliferate. As the terms are used in this report, the terms false claims, misleading claims, unsubstantiated claims, or any combination thereof are evaluations by the research team of the underlying statements and assertions grounded in the methodology laid out below in the research design section and appendices. Such claims, evidence suggests, have played a vital role in shaping public opinion and political behavior. Despite these risks, the podcasting ecosystem and its role in political debates have received little attention for a variety of reasons, including the technical difficulties in analyzing multi-hour audio-based content and misconceptions about the medium. So to analyze the millions of hours of audio content, Brookings used natural language processing to search for keywords and phrases. It then relied on self-styled fact-checking sites get this, folks, self-styled fact-checking sites like PolitiFact and Snopes to determine the truth or falsity of these statements. So get that. This is why I said this was extremely dangerous to begin with. Snopes and PolitiFact should not be the arbiters of truth. And this is exactly why people said this was a bad idea to begin with. Okay? Because how wrong has PolitiFact and Snopes been? Do any of you guys go to PolitiFact or Snopes to get truthful information, to get facts? No. In fact, if I want to know if something's true or false, I go to PolitiFact, and if they say it's false, it's most likely true. It's the opposite. They have such a political narrative. They are so wrong on so much stuff. It's not even funny. And so now this artificial intelligence is going to be relying on PolitiFact and Snopes to determine what is true and what is false. It's not good, folks. So next it deployed a function to detect similar false statements in other podcasts. The result? Conservative podcasters, get this, folks, conservative podcasters were 11 times more likely than liberal podcasters to share claims fact-checked as false or unsubstantiated. Wow. 11 times more likely. That's it, folks. That's it. So one show Brookings misclassified as conservative is the Dark Horse Science podcast hosted by Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying. Over the past 3 years, they meticulously explored the complex world of COVID, delivering scintillating insights and humbly correcting their infrequent missteps. Brookings, however, determined 13.8% of their shows contained false information. What would the Brookings methodology, using different set of fact-checkers, spit out if applied to CNN, the Washington Post, the FDA, the CDC, or the hundreds of blogs, podcasts, TV doctors, and science communicators who got nearly everything wrong? Well, I don't know. Do you think it would say any of those things had wrong information? I doubt it. Speaking on journalist Matt Taibbi's podcast, novelist Walter Kern skewered the new AI fact-checking scheme and says it pretends to turn censorship into a mathematical, not constitutional concern, or, as he calls it, sciencey bull. The daisy chain of presumptuous omniscience, selection bias, and false precision employed to arrive at these supposedly quantitative conclusions about...
Here we go.
I can't even read this shit, dude. This guy needs to chill the out on these words. Like, damn. So there you go, folks. That article is pretty much done. So they're going to be using artificial intelligence to come after podcasts now. What do you think is going to happen? And not only that, but the artificial intelligence is going to be referring to Snopes and PolitiFact to determine what is truth and what is not. This is why people said that fact-checking like this is so wrong. Do you guys remember when they were like, oh, Donald Trump lied 300,000 times during his administration? And then you go and look at some of the lies, and it's like, and some of the stuff is so stupid. One of the facts, I'm not joking here. I mean, I'm going to emphasize what it said, but it's kind of the same thing. One of the fact checks was, quote, Donald Trump said he had 3 scoops of ice cream. And then when you fact check it, it'll say, well, Donald Trump actually only had two scoops of ice cream or something stupid like that, man. I mean, so dumb. And they consider that a lie. That lie was part of the 30,000 lies that he said. Another one was that I seen, you guys remember when the college football players went there and he got McDonald's and Wendy's for them? And they thought it was awesome, by the way, instead of, the normal typical cliche dinner at the White House. So Donald Trump made a statement about having Big Macs stacked a mile high, and they actually fact-checked that and called that a lie. So they actually broke it down and they said, well, in order for there to be a stack of Big Macs a mile high, he would have to have so and so. He would have to have so many Big Macs. Like, for real, folks, that's what they're counting as lies. This is what we have to deal with. This is why I say this is so dangerous. And just like I pointed out in my last episode, why they're doing this. What they're trying to do is, this is all for the election, folks. This is all for the election. The corporate media is dying. They no longer have a stranglehold on the information anymore, and they know they're losing people to podcasts and other independent media outlets, and they cannot have that. So what they're going to do now is just like I explained to you in my last episode. They're going to lump all the Republicans and conservatives in this pyramid of far-right radicalization, and then they're going to target them using the intel agencies and the Justice Department. And it's going to be completely justified because all they're going to say is, well, they fall into the white supremacist category. That's what they're going to do, folks. I'm telling you, I see it right now. When you have the whistleblowers that came out and said that the FBI was purposely inflating the case numbers to make it look like there were more cases of white supremacy than what there really was, that's an issue, folks. And then on top of that, you have the president doing that speech at HBCU, and he said that the biggest threat to our nation is white supremacists and domestic terrorists. That's an issue, folks, because essentially what he's saying is all Republicans and conservatives are domestic terrorists. That's what he's saying. Because if you're lumping Republicans and conservatives, if you're lumping Make America Great Again, Fox News, the NRA, and the Republican Party into this pyramid of far-right radicalization, you're essentially calling all Republican conservatives terrorists, domestic terrorists. And sorry, folks, but there's 80+ million people out there. And so people are starting to catch on. I'm telling you, folks, I see a change. The pendulum is swinging the other way. It's just not there yet. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But I do see it getting better, folks. I do. And so I'm starting to see a pattern here between the DOJ, its Stasi secret police, and this entire symbiotic relationship between the weaponized government and their media apparatus. I think we can all see that they're all colluding with one another to protect their corrupt temple they've held on to for decades. And they're not even trying to hide it anymore. So Comey just did an interview with Psaki, the former White House press secretary, now anchor at MSNBC. And I guess this is just accepted as normal these days. So how many people are leaving government and going into the media? Folks, it's all the same thing. The media, the government, the media, it's all one giant institution now. There's so much nepotism flowing through our government, flowing through our politics, and flowing through our media. And a lot of people out there will say, yeah, it's always been like that. It has. It has. It's just gotten a lot worse over the last couple decades. A lot worse, especially in the last decade. The last 8 to 10 years, so much worse. They're, like I said, they're not even trying to hide it anymore because they're so desperate to hang on to this monopoly they've had on power. They're so desperate to hold on to that what they're doing is so blatant and obvious now. They're just doing things they normally wouldn't do in disparity. And so I got some audio of James Comey and why it was, and it's James Comey explaining why it's so important to not allow Trump to get elected. Here, check this out.
You said that Trump poses a near existential threat to the rule of law. And this is something, similar language that I hear privately from national security officials, some people you and I both know, who will say this privately about what a second term could mean. But tell me a little bit about the specifics of what he could try to do. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about what 4 years of a retribution presidency might look like. He could order the investigation and prosecution of individuals who he sees as enemies. I'm sure I'm on the enemies list. Because the president constitutionally does oversee the executive branch entirely, which includes the Department of Justice, prosecutors and investigators. And so he could direct that individuals be pursued. He could also direct all kinds of other conduct that people would maybe take to court to try to stop. But who enforces court orders? Mm-hmm. Mostly the United States Marshals Service, which is in part of the executive branch and reports to the president. And so President Trump could say, I don't care what the Supreme Court says or these district judges say. I'm telling the Marshals Service, don't enforce the court order. And so our Constitution really does give a rogue president, which is what this would be, tremendous power to destroy. And so that's why I'm trying to warn people. Given the way he said he intends to operate if he's reelected, this will be something we could never have imagined. Again, it seems like science fiction in a way, but it's what another 4 years of Donald Trump really promises, which is why people criticize CNN for their town hall. I want the American people to stare at the threat that we're facing and understand that they cannot take the next election off.
And the way he was sitting, folks, he was sitting cross-legged with his arms crossed in just like a really concealed body post. Anyways, his body language was really weird. And so the reason why James Comey is so afraid is because they accused Trump of destroying the country when it was actually them destroying the country, folks. And they're trying to convince the people that Trump is a danger to the country, when in reality, the people were better under Trump. They were. It's not the people that need to be scared of Trump. The people were better than they ever were under a Trump administration. I mean, you have people that will admit it, and you have people that won't admit it. But either way, we know for a fact people were doing better under the Trump administration. We know that. There's no denying it. Nobody even denies it. Trust me. If they could, folks, they would. They would. They would go out every single day on CNN and MSNBC, and they would say, you are better off now than you were during the Trump administration. But they can't do it because they know people were better off under Donald Trump than they are Joe Biden. So Comey and these corporate media outlets don't see Trump a danger to the people. They see Trump a danger to them. They see Trump as a danger to this corrupt swamp temple that we have in our government now, and all the little swamp creatures that reside in it. Everyone should want Trump elected because it's going to be Trump and only Trump that cleans this mess up once and for all and give the country back to the people. In ancient Rome, in times of crisis, the leaders would elect a citizen, and they would give that citizen complete control of the entire empire and its military. And one of these times, the ancient Romans elected a man named Lucius Cincinnatus. And that is the word where Cincinnati, Ohio comes from. His name was Lucius Cincinnatus. He was born in 1519 BC. And Cincinnatus was a Roman statesman and a farmer. And he gained fame for his selflessness devotion to the Republic in times of crisis. So during one of these times, they elected Cincinnatus to take control of the empire until the crisis was over. Whether it was famine or war, if there was a military knocking at the gates, he fixed everything cleaned up, everything cleared up, and things were better. He actually gave the reins of power back to the people. And so I ask, is Trump our modern-day Cincinnatus? And if not, folks, who is? Because that is exactly what we need right now. We need a modern-day Cincinnatus. We need somebody that's going to come in, clean this stuff up, and give the country back to the people, and then be done and go back to their normal lives. That's what the founders intended politics to be. That's what the founders wanted the executive branch to be, and all the political positions. So that's what we need right now, folks. We need a modern-day Cincinnatus. That is exactly what we need. And look, I think Trump is that. I think Trump is our Cincinnatus. I think Ron DeSantis is good. I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to endorse one candidate over the other. I'm just saying that Donald Trump seems to fit the scenario a little bit better. I know people are talking about how Trump can't win in a general, but folks, you have to remember that Donald Trump is a freak of nature, man. This guy is a machine. And Ron DeSantis, if he's just going to come in and just put in place all of Trump's policies, then why not just have Trump do it? And so that's why I support Trump, and I support DeSantis too. I support both of them on the same ticket. If this country was really bad, then they would learn to put their differences aside and come together. But I'm telling you, I think they're going to run on the same ticket. But we most certainly need somebody that's going to clean this stuff up. Clean it up and just give it back to the people. That's it. That's it. So, I don't know. I wanted to leave the show off. I told you guys I wanted to leave the show off with some hope. I'm going to try every show, every episode. I want to leave you guys with some hope. So, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the drowning rat experiment by Dr. Richter. I don't know if it's Richter or Richter. It's one of them. And it sounds kind of brutal. So you're just going to have to bear with me, but there's a good message in this experiment. So Dr. Richter had domesticated rats and wild rats. His first experiment, he took buckets of water. He put the domesticated rats in the water and to see how long they could swim for. Well, after a couple minutes, they drowned. They were done. They were dead. And then so he's like, you know what? I bet the wild rats would last a lot longer because they're wild, they're more vigorous, they've been out in the wild longer, they probably know, they probably have a lot more survival skills. And so he put the wild rat in the same buckets of water. And 2 minutes later, boom, done. The rats drowned almost the exact same time. And then so out of curiosity, he wanted to check something else out. So he put both the domesticated rats and the wild rats in the buckets of water, but he did something different this time. Right before the rats looked like they were getting ready to give up and drown, he took them out. He took them out and he let them rest and he let them get some breath. And this is the brutal part. And he put them back into the water. Well, what he noticed, to his surprise, is that the rats actually continued to swim for 60 hours after that. And so he concluded with his experiment that in the face of hopelessness, people give up easily. But when given a little bit of hope, people tend to fight for a little bit longer. So don't give up, folks. Don't give up. I want you guys to know that I am betting long on the United States of America. I truly believe this country is the greatest country that has ever existed in mankind's history. Ever. I truly believe this is the greatest place ever. And as of right now, we still have our free speech. As of right now, that is certainly being challenged right now by our elite class, by the ruling class, you could say, by this establishment uniparty swamp, this corrupt temple that we have running our country right now. And so our freedom of speech is certainly being challenged, along with all the other rights that we're given to by God. They're most certainly being challenged. We have a battle on religion. We have a battle on speech. We're fighting multiple battles in this culture war, folks. And so I just want to let you know that there is hope. And because there's hope, you can't give up. And you shouldn't give up. So that's all I got for today's show. I wanted to point these things out to you. I hope I explained it to you well. On this show, folks, I'm going to try my best to research these things and study it, examine it, and then report it back to you. That is what I'm trying to do. And sometimes, I want to simplify these things. I want to paint a big picture on the wall for everybody to see it and for everybody to study it. And so that you guys can share it with your friends and family. And I don't know what possessed me to make this show. I don't know what possessed me to start this podcast. I just felt like other people may benefit if I could just read these things, study it, examine it, because I'm doing that anyways. And if I could figure out a way to simplify it and explain it to hundreds or even thousands of people, then I would be doing my part. And I would be doing the best job that I can and with something that I have to give. And so I want to try and simplify these things for you. And so that's what we're going to do on this show. And the corrupt temple, this establishment uniparty, they're going to come after us. They're going to come after podcasts. They're going to come after Tucker Carlson. So I just want you guys to know that I will most certainly fight for you in the trenches during all this. I will jump into the ring with the chaos, and I will wrestle this thing down, and I will report back to you the best I can. And so from here on out, I'm going to start leaving all the research materials that I've gathered throughout my examination. When I see a pattern, when I see a trend that's happening, I'm going to report it to you. And also I'm going to leave the research materials in the description of my podcast so that if I don't simplify it, my one job that I really want to do is simplify these things for you. And in some cases, I can't really do that because I can't get what is on my brain. I can't get it out to you in ways that you can understand. I hope I am. I'm certainly trying to. That is the goal. What I understand is sometimes I'm not going to be able to do that. So I want to leave the research materials for you in my podcast description, in the episode description. So if you guys want to go back and you want to look at the resource materials for yourself, you can. And I encourage you to. Research into all of it yourself, read it, study it, and then you can explain it to other people yourself. This is what we need to do. We need to stay informed, folks. Because why? Because informed people make informed decisions. And the informed decisions are the best decisions. And I'm afraid right now we're just experiencing and witnessing what happens when a vast majority of our population just makes uninformed decisions. And I think that's exactly what this Biden administration is. Now, put aside the election rigging, put aside all the shenanigans that we still don't know about yet, and I'm sure is going to be come to fruition down the road. A lot of people just made a mistake because they weren't informed with what is happening. They were caught off guard by the legacy swamp media, the relationship that they have with the government and the corrupt temple. And so the people these people that voted for Joe Biden just got caught off guard. Well, I think that's changing, folks. I'm starting to see a pattern. People are done. You're starting to see the poll numbers for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. skyrocket against Joe Biden. You're starting to see people really dislike Joe Biden running for president again. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean they won't vote for him. All this means is that there is a change coming. I do see the pendulum swinging the other way. And so I think this next election is crucial. And the other side knows it. The corrupt establishment swamp feels threatened, folks. They feel threatened by independent outlets like mine, independent outlets like all the other conservative Republican podcast hosts. And so as time goes on, we're going to try and focus on what the government is doing. I want to keep you up to date with how the government and what the government is doing. And so that I feel like is important for you to know come election time, so you can decide what decision you're going to make. I have a feeling I already know what your decision is, but for the people that don't, for the people that are in the middle and the people that are truly independent and don't really know which way to go, I want them to be able to listen to my shows and understand exactly what's happening. I'm not trying to push a narrative, folks. I'm not trying to push anything. I'm not trying to push a story. I'm just trying to give my listeners information. I'm trying to give you information so that you can make up your own minds. But things are certainly going to be difficult here in the future when they start trying to censor podcasts. So I'm working right now to try and find an alternative route. Right now I'm on Rumble. I'm on YouTube as of now. We'll see how long that lasts. And I'm on other outlets. Now, if this Twitter thing turns out to be pretty good, I don't know. I'm going to look more into it. I'm going to start posting the videos to Twitter. I'm going to see what it details and see how that goes. I'm already on Twitter. You can find the show on Twitter, and then we'll go from there. But as of right now, just really pay attention to what the government is doing. I see a pattern. Here, and it's not good. And that's what we're going to be talking about on the next show with the ATF pistol brace rule that passed. It's the 120 days is up, folks. And so as of right now, if you own one of these pistol braces, you're a felon, essentially. In the eyes of the ATF, you're a felon. So, and people didn't even know about this. That is one of the reasons why I want to talk about it on the next show. That is what the show is for. I'm going to try and sift through all the BS. I'm going to try and sift through the smoke and mirrors, and I'm going to try and get to the things that actually matter. Okay, so I think, certainly if you're being targeted by the government and you didn't even know it, that's something I feel like people need to know. And so, like I said, if you own one of these pistol braces, you're essentially a felon right now because the injunction that the judges from Texas laid out, that doesn't include everyone. It just includes certain plaintiffs. So that's important for you to know. So just keep up to date with that. Keep an eye on that. And we're going to be talking about it on the next show. So if you guys could, big favor, if you could follow the show and share the show with your friends and family and tell them to follow the show, that would really help. Also, follow the show on YouTube and Rumble. I would really appreciate that. That's definitely going to help get this podcast, out there into the algorithm. That is what we want. We want other people to know the patterns that I'm seeing. We want other people to know that they're being lumped up into a far-right radicalization pyramid with the Nazi Party and all the other people. people need to know this stuff. And so that's why I think it's important for you to just share the show with your friends and family so that they're aware of all this that's going on. And then, yeah, you could find us on Twitter. I haven't really been promoting on TikTok lately. I got to get back into that. I've been so busy here lately, folks, between my job, my regular job, and this podcast and researching. By the time I get done researching for a show, there's an entire whole new media cycle. So the media cycle is like 24-hour period. So in 24 hours, you'll have, 2 or 3 media cycles. It's crazy. So, yeah, if you could follow the show on Twitter, Rumble, YouTube, TikTok, wherever. You can find us everywhere. Any platform they could find the podcast. Tell your friends and family, and tell them also to follow the show. That really helps if you subscribe and follow and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's all I got for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And as always, I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great week. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.